tonight is nutritional and mental prep for the marathon. We have a wonderful panel of speakers for you tonight. We are starting off with Andrea Chernus, who's a registered dietitian in our Sports Performance Center at the Center for Musculoskeletal Care. She has a master's degree in science in nutrition and exercise physiology from Columbia, and she's board certified in diabetes education and sports nutrition. She's a consultant for nutritional counseling, where she's completed projects for college and pro athletes, and she currently helps students in the Juilliard School to eat healthfully. She has delivered lectures to students, athletes, consumers, and professional groups. She's also the co-author of Nutrient Timing for Peak Performance. Her articles have appeared in Bottom Line, Point, Dance Spirit, and other publications. She's appeared national and local radio and television, and has been quoted in numerous publications. So we're very lucky to have Andrea here tonight, and she'll be starting off the evening. Welcome.
Hi, thanks everybody for coming tonight. So I'm here to talk to you about sports nutrition for the marathoner. So I'm just wondering if this marathoner looks familiar to any of you. There's quite a lot of gear that this guy has. Whether it's all really necessary or not, I don't know, but I can tell you that absolutely the beverage is necessary. Allison here is going to be talking to you more about hydration. And the snack bag is necessary, except for this guy's leaving a little bit of a trail of his fuel. So I hope that if you carry fuel with you on your marathon, it's a little bit more aerodynamic, and your fuel belt works a little bit better than this guy's. But I just thought we'd look at this guy. So today I'd like to talk to you about what you should be eating during your training, during the weeks before the marathon, and then at the end of the lecture, we'll also talk about what you should actually be doing on marathon day, how you should be eating the day before, during the marathon, and after. And what you really truly need to know is that nutrition during your training is more important, just as important, or really more important than what you eat and what you take in on marathon day. Good sports nutrition is much more than just taking in enough carbohydrates and enough calories. It's about eating the right types of food in the right amounts at the right time. And that's all about the concept of nutrient timing, not just what to eat before, during, and after your exercise, but throughout the whole day as well. And it's just as important to your success, sports nutrition, as any other piece of gear or running equipment. Just as you care about your running shoes, which I know all runners do, we really need that right fit. Well, sports nutrition is just as important as having the right running gear and the right shoes. So timing of your food intake really truly matters. You really need to be eating frequently throughout the day. You need to have 3 meals each and every day. I see so many runners that skip meals because they're busy and they're just not really paying attention or making it a priority. But 3 meals are really important, and snacks to fill the hunger gaps. You know, everybody here in New York works really long hours, and it's real easy to go for like 8 hours between lunch and dinner. So snacks are vitally important. We really want to have some sort of meal or snack every 3 to 5 hours. Consistent eating helps to manage your appetite and your hunger, and especially as your mileage increases, which has happened, and I'm sure is happening now if you're training for the marathon. I have marathoners come to me all the time saying, oh my God, I'm so hungry. I don't know what to eat. I can't stand it. And that's because they're not eating consistently during the day. And that actually will really help manage that hunger. Eating consistently also helps to repair damaged muscle tissue, because taking in food at one time in bulk can't repair your muscle tissue. That's repaired over time, 24 to 48 hours actually, to repair tissue. And so eating food consistently helps with that. Eating consistently also helps to replace glycogen. Does everybody know what the term glycogen means? Glycogen is the storage form of carbohydrate inside your muscle tissue. It's the energy that your muscles use in order to fuel your running. So it takes time to replace the glycogen that you've used up during your run. And it also takes time to rehydrate. our body loses a lot of fluid during running, and we can't rehydrate all at once. So we have to do that over time as well. So eating consistently over time can help to provide all the raw materials that our body needs. Foods also, one thing I wanted to mention, that foods also help to provide the fluid. Food can provide up to 20 to 30% of your fluid needs depending on what kind of foods that you're eating. So let's talk a little bit about carbohydrate, because runners always are concerned about carbohydrates. And I'd like to clear up a few misconceptions. Carbs come from a wide variety of foods. There are simple sugars, which get a bad rap. Everybody thinks that simple sugars are just devoid of nutritional quality, and that is absolutely not true, because simple sugars are found in fruits and fruit juices. Simple sugars are also in milk and yogurt. They're actually found in vegetables like broccoli and carrots and cauliflower and asparagus and things like that. Simple sugars are in sweets like cookies and cake and ice cream and candies. And simple sugars are in your sports fuels. So some simple sugars are found in foods that have a lot of nutritional value. Complex carbohydrates, on the other hand, are found in starches, whether they're refined starches like white bread or pasta. Those have complex carbohydrates, as well as cereals, potatoes, corn, foods like rice. Those are all complex carbohydrate, whether they're whole grain or whether they're white. They're still complex carbohydrate. Legumes like kidney beans, black beans, and lentils are also complex carbohydrate. So when we eat carbohydrate foods, whether they come from a jelly bean or a stalk of asparagus or a whole grain, they all break down eventually into your bloodstream as glucose. And glucose is the currency that your muscles need. Glucose is the currency that every organ in our body uses for energy. So glucose in the bloodstream is used to fuel your brain. So we need to be able to be sharp and think when we're running, to be aware of our surroundings. Glucose is also stored in the liver as glycogen, and it's stored in our muscle tissue as glycogen. And if you eat too much carbohydrate or too much of any food, it can be converted into fat and stored in your fat cells. So a little bit more about carb, that a diet that's too low in carbohydrates, and some runners actually don't take in enough carbohydrate, a diet that's too low in carb can result in muscle tissue breakdown. When our glycogen stores are used up in our muscles and we continue to exercise, muscles can emit substances that cause muscle tissue breakdown, and that can actually end up lead to injury and excessive muscle soreness. So we do need to have enough carbohydrate, in our diet. Adequate carbohydrate also spares protein. Protein is used to repair muscle tissue and for many other purposes I'll get to in a second. But if we take in adequate carbohydrate, it allows our muscles to use protein for what it's intended, for muscle repair. We need the right amount of carbohydrates at the right times every single day. So many of my runners will say, well, you know, I had like a big bowl of pasta on Tuesday. Wasn't that enough? No, we need to replace those glycogen stores every day. So don't be carb phobic, because we can get carbohydrate from many different sources. So let's talk about protein and shift gears just for a minute. What you need to know about protein, first of all, a lot of runners ignore protein because they're thinking about carbohydrates so much. Protein is vital, as I was saying before, for the repair of muscle tissue. It's also really important to repair and replace red blood cells. There's a phenomenon called foot strike hemolysis, whereby runners, just by the mere pounding of your feet, you destruct red blood cells, and your body needs to manufacture new blood cells all the time, and protein helps to do that. We also need protein to manufacture hormones and enzymes and antibodies. And as your mileage increases, it can play a number on your immune system. A lot of runners find, and they find this right before the marathon, sometimes they start to get sick because increased exercise can decrease your immunity if your nutrition isn't proper. So it's important to get adequate protein to be able to keep your immune system strong and humming along. So a little bit more about protein that's really important to understand. Though some people eat a lot more at one time, the body can actually only utilize at most about 35 grams of protein at a time, at a sitting. So that's the equivalent of about 5 ounces of a meat, fish, or protein, of meat, fish, or poultry, something like that, which is a little bit bigger than a deck of cards, because the body has nowhere to store all the amino acids that come from the protein, that are the building blocks of the protein. So we really want to consume small amounts of protein at each and every meal. We don't need large amounts, but we do need to have it at breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Excuse me, and that's what we're going to talk about now. Putting this all together. And I have a handout in your folders there that talk about what our plate should really look like. And I think this is a great depiction to give you an idea how to put all of this together in real food in practical terms, because that's what we really want to know here, is how we should be eating. So we want, this is about, say, 3/4 of our plate should come from carbohydrate-rich foods. It doesn't all have to come from the starchy foods, like so many runners are afraid of eating too much of these, but we do want to have some fruits or vegetables at each meal. So in your daily training, in average, average length runs, I would say, in your like weekday runs, your plate should look pretty much like this. If you're doing like 5-7 mile runs, that's pretty much where, how many people are following a training program? So weekday runs that are shorter, this is a great template. 1/4 of the plate should be protein, and I have another kind of way how to build your plate. So like I said, 3/4 of the plate can come from starches, fruits, and vegetables. But we really want to have about half of that come from starches. At mealtime, we want to include nutrient-dense foods. That's when we really want to include the whole grains like oatmeal and whole grain cereals, and maybe brown rice or quinoa or millet or whole grain pasta, or things like sweet potatoes, foods that really have a lot of nutritional value. Come on in. Welcome. All fruits are good. I just didn't have that much space here, so whether it's apples, berries, melon, pineapple, the more dark and richly colored fruits and vegetables are, the greater nutritional value they have. They're all good. I recommend anything and everything that you like in terms of fruits and vegetables. Vegetables, asparagus, broccoli, cauliflower, green beans. Lettuce does not have very high carbohydrate value, so I wouldn't build half of your plate around lettuce. I'd be sure to include a number of these other vegetables. 1/4 of your plate should be protein, whether you're vegetarian or whether you're an omnivore and eat everything. You can follow this plate plan regardless. So 1/4 of the plate should have protein. Don't skip protein at breakfast time. You can have milk, you can have yogurt, eggs, cottage cheese, regular cheese are all good sources of protein. And a lot of people skip protein at breakfast time, and that's a key to staying full and satisfied throughout the day. We want to include a little bit of fat in the diet. As your calorie needs increase, you can have larger servings of fat, but the healthier fats come from oils, avocados, nuts, nut butters, oil-based salad dressings. Less healthy sources are the high-fat dairy. We also want to include fluid at mealtime. So whether it's water, skim milk, a milk alternative for people that need more carbs and calories, chocolate milk, fruit juice, those are all good choices. Coffee and tea are fine also, just don't overdo it. So as your mileage increases, we move to the performance plate. So this will help to give you a greater quantity of carbohydrates because the starches are denser in carbohydrates. So before and after long runs, we want half the plate to be filled with starches. You know, and around the marathon, we'd recommend eating this way also. Your body still needs some protein, so your protein needs don't change that much. They're based on your weight. So about a quarter of the plate should, come on in, should be filled with protein. And then you can cut back a little bit. Still include vegetables, don't omit them, but they could be a quarter of the plate. So that's how we transition from shorter runs to longer runs to get in a little bit more carbohydrate in our diet. So in the weeks before the marathon, which is right now, what I want you to do is to practice training with food before running, because I want your mantra to be nothing new on marathon day. Ingrain that in your head. We don't want to try anything new. So I have so many runners that, you know, run in the morning, go out for like a 3-4 mile run, maybe don't eat anything. I say to them, so what are you planning? Are you planning to have breakfast on marathon morning? Oh yeah. What are you going to have? Well, I don't know. So we really want to practice, because you don't want to start eating something that you've never had before. What happens if it doesn't sit well in your stomach? So we want to practice with food before training. We want to practice eating the breakfast you're planning on having marathon morning. And we want to practice what your fueling will be during the marathon. That's another part. You need to have a plan. We also want to maximize recovery after long runs or intense runs. So we want to pay attention to what you eat before and after a run. Come on. So your pre-run fueling depends on whether you're morning, afternoon, or evening runner, because believe it or not, your previous meals are what is actually fueling your run. Everybody is so concerned with what to eat right before they go out to exercise. That just really tops off your tank. It's not completely fueling your run, because that little itty bitty snack can't fuel 5, 7, or 8 miles. The closer to the run, the purer in carbohydrate we want the food to be. So what does that mean? That means that the food should not have, whatever you're eating right before a run, should not have fiber, should not have protein at that time, or very little, and should have low to no fat. Why? There's a couple of reasons. First of all of these food components stay in your stomach longer. So if they're in your stomach, they're not getting to your muscles to fuel your muscles. So it's a little bit of a waste. Number 2, if it stays in your stomach longer, it can cause discomfort, because once you start exercising, blood is diverted to your muscles and digestion slows. So we don't want food that's going to stay in our stomach a long time, especially if you have something right before you go out for a run. Immediately before, so the amount we have is dependent also on the time, how soon or how far away from our run our snack is. So for those of you who have 1 foot in your bed and 1 foot out the door, you can have 15 grams of carbohydrate. I'd say up to 15 grams of carbohydrate of a quick digesting fuel. Something like a slice of white bread, a half a banana, a rice cake, could also be some sports drink. It's something that is not going to, we're thinking fuel. We're not thinking, you know, great nutrition here. It doesn't have to have a lot of vitamins and minerals at this point in time. We want it to just kind of top off the tank. If you have a little bit more time, say 15 to 30 minutes before a run, your snack can be a little bit bigger, about 25 grams of carbohydrate. Toast and jam, a handful of pretzels, a cereal like Corn Chex or Honey Nut Cheerios, which has like no fiber. So don't think that that's a health cereal, it's not. If you have more time, like an hour before a run, so this might be appropriate for people who, you know, run later in the afternoon, you could have a small bowl of cereal like Rice Krispies or Corn Flakes with a little milk, because you have an hour for it to digest. You could have a mini bagel with jam or a packet of flavored cream of wheat or instant oatmeal. And while the oatmeal has a small amount of fiber, it's chopped up into such little pieces that it ends up digesting rather quickly. So those are good choices an hour before a run. Could also be a couple of rice cakes maybe and some sports drink. So let's talk about what to do during your run, how to fuel yourself during the run. You need to practice with what you're going to fuel with during the marathon. If you're going to use what they give out, find out what flavor it is. I think during the marathon they use like the lemon lime Gatorade. So if you hate that flavor, then you're, in a bad place. If you're planning on using gels, find out what they're going to have so that you can tolerate it. During your training runs now, you really don't need fuel during the run unless it's about 90 minutes or longer. But you still may want to experiment a little bit on shorter runs. But the rule of thumb is that you don't have to. I see people going out, some people going out for like a 3-mile run and they think they need a gel, and that's just not, that's not true. So the gels, the sports drinks, solid foods, they all work fine, whether you choose to use a solid sports fuel like a block or a Chomp or something like that. Some people will eat pretzels or salted boiled potatoes because they get tired of the sweet taste. Typical fueling is 30 to 60 grams of carbohydrate per hour. And when your fuel has multiple different sugars, the body can absorb them more efficiently. Some people can tolerate up to 84 grams of carbohydrate an hour, but that's with practice. I wouldn't suggest anybody going out and trying to take in that much fuel at one time. Studies have shown that. We'll get back to developing a fueling plan when we talk about fueling for the marathon in a minute or two. So recovery. Recovery is most important after runs of 90 minutes or more, or after intense sessions, or if you're doing 2 workouts a day. Now, if you're on a good marathon training program, you shouldn't really be working out twice a day. But if you're a triathlete, a lot of times triathletes do work out twice a day. So if you're a 2-a-day person, you absolutely have to have a recovery snack after your first workout. It's really important because it helps to replace the energy stores and repair your muscle tissue. And it helps to prevent muscle soreness and gets you ready for your next workout. And the time matters because the enzymes that help to store carbohydrate in your muscles and also help to take in the amino acids from protein dissipate with time. So they kind of fall off. They are reduced after about 2 hours. So we want to take advantage as quickly as possible to help build up your ability to store carbohydrate in your muscles. Think of it as enlarging your fuel tank. So the sooner you can have a recovery snack, the better. If you're not hungry, and a lot of people aren't because their body temperature is elevated. And when your body temperature is elevated, it can take away your appetite. So in that case, a recovery beverage can help. It's better to drink something rather than just say, well, I'm really not hungry, so I'm not going to have anything. And we want to repeat in 2 hours. We want to have either a recovery meal and then in 2 hours have a snack, or have a recovery snack and then have a meal. So if you run in the morning and you use breakfast as your recovery, then you need to plan on having a snack 2 hours later. Because the body, although the glycogen storing enzymes dissipate, they don't go away. Your body takes time to replace the glycogen, if that makes sense. So recovery snacks should contain some mostly carbohydrate and a little bit of protein. And the amounts that we recommend are based on body weight and intensity of training. So they're all based, we use kilograms. If you don't know how to figure kilograms, I'll tell you. It's your weight in pounds divided by 2.2. So a 120-pound person, for example, that person would need between 5 and 11 grams of protein and between 55 and 80 grams of carb. So a Stonyfield smoothie drink, and a banana would be appropriate for them. Or say 12 ounces of chocolate milk and 2 rice cakes. A larger person who's 175 pounds, maybe they would need a Cliff Bar instead of the banana because that will help to boost up their protein and carb intake. Or maybe they'll take 16 ounces of chocolate milk and a small bagel. So here's some other ideas for recovery foods. Could be a bagel, cottage cheese, and juice. And the protein from dairy foods is taken up into muscle tissue rather quickly. So if you can tolerate and you like dairy foods, they're good for recovery. But if you don't, you can still get protein from other sources. You could have a turkey sandwich, you could have soy milk and a super pretzel, beef or turkey jerky and orange juice. Some good recovery beverages are Boost, Carnation, which used to be Carnation Instant Breakfast, Carnation Breakfast Essentials, or Isopure Plus, which is a non-creamy kind of drink. It's clear. People tend to like that, especially if they don't have much of an appetite. A lot of my runners, prefer something to that like that. So these are all good ideas for recovery foods. So the week before the marathon. So now we're transitioning to right before the marathon. Should we carb load? Everybody talks about carb loading, or maybe we used to talk about carb loading. Actually, what we recommend today is not as much carb loading, but tapering your training. Your training program, your training plan should tell you not to run less and to actually rest the week before the marathon. And in doing so, if you're following the eating program that we're talking about here, you'll end up storing the carbohydrates as glycogen, and you'll be doing a great job, and you can rest and relax and enjoy yourself. And don't be upset if you gain a little weight, because that really means that you're doing a great job of storing glycogen, because with each gram of carbohydrate that you store in your muscles, you store 3 grams of water. So it's really heavy. Glycogen is heavy. It means you're doing a good job. Put on 2 or 3 or 4 pounds, you're all fueled up and ready to go. So don't get upset with that. So the day before the marathon, your larger meal doesn't have to be dinner. Everybody thinks, oh, they have to have like a huge plate of pasta. Not so. You could have your large meal at lunch or at breakfast even if you want. All meals should be familiar foods. What's the mantra? Nothing new on marathon day or the day before. So nothing spicy, nothing really high in fat, and I'll add in nothing really high in fiber either. You want it to sit well with you. You want it to be tolerable. Foods that you're comfortable with. They should be high in carb, but you still need a little bit of protein. Your body still has protein needs, so you don't have to have an entire plate of pasta. It could be, sweet potato in a roll and some, some fish or chicken or lean beef and a little bit of vegetable, and that's great. Hydrate through the day, and this goes without saying, no alcohol, but I'll say it anyway. Relax and try to get a good night's sleep. That might be easier said than done for some people. So your last meal on race day, what should you have as your last meal? Well, your last meal is not necessarily the last time that you eat. So, because after you have your pre-race meal, which should probably be about 5 o'clock in the morning, because if you're doing the New York City Marathon, by the time you get the buses or however you're getting down to the holding area, you have to leave early. So, and there's going to be like 5 hours until you start to run. So you can have a nice breakfast. Something like a bagel with jelly, tall glass of juice, and a yogurt. You can include a little bit of protein to satiate you, to carry you through. We just don't want it to be a huge amount of protein. You have 5 hours to digest this breakfast, remember. You can have some eggs, toast with jam, a glass of juice. It's really high in carb, but a little bit of protein is okay. So you had breakfast before you left home. Now in the holding area, you can bring a snack with you. You can people like to bring pretzels, bananas, rice cakes, animal crackers. You can drink some sports drink, orange wedges. You can just like eat the insides of them. You don't have to eat the whole orange. Power bars. You can perhaps have a little tip-off 15 minutes before you start, some sports drink, Nutri-Grain bar, crackers. Those are all very quick digesting carbohydrates. Then people always ask me, so when should I start fueling? When should I have a gel? So now we'll talk about your fueling plan during the marathon. Gels provide around 25 grams of carbohydrates. So whether it's sports drinks or solid or gels, they all work. Depends on how hard you train, your intensity, and how well fueled you are when you enter the race. If you're just using a gel, you've got to drink water. So you have to have a hydration plan. Allison is going to talk about it in a minute. So the basic rule of thumb of fueling is 30 to 60 grams of carb per hour. With practice, you can take in more. If you take in too much at one time, it's going to stay in your stomach and either slosh around or make you feel bad, nauseate you. So have a plan. And this is how to develop a plan. So you'll start fueling like 45 minutes to maybe a little over an hour into the race. What I want you to do now during your training is to determine how many grams of carbohydrate you need per hour. Smaller people, about 30 grams an hour. Larger people, maybe 45 to 60 grams an hour. And divide your fuel, whatever you decide, divide it into 10, 15, or 20-minute intervals so that you can consistently fuel yourself through the race. Because the last thing we want to do is take in that 60 grams of carbohydrate at one time. Even if you're planning on doing 30 grams of carb, then you get no other fuel for the whole hour if you're using a gel. So that doesn't really make sense to me. So here are some different fueling plans. And it's in your handout, so you don't have to write these down. But I've kind of figured out, and I can help any of you if you need to. You can email me and ask, give me some other ideas for like 45 grams an hour. I want to use this fuel. How do I do it? I'll be happy to help you with that. But these are ideas, on how to fuel yourself and divide it up so that it's comfortable and tolerable for you and that your body can utilize it more effectively through your run. We want to refuel and rehydrate after. Remember, you need to recover from this 26.2 mile run. Just like you do on a recovery for a regular run, we want to refuel and rehydrate. You can take in up to 30 grams of protein. A lot of times I see people after the marathon just eating bagels and bananas and things like that. They're not getting any protein in. Your muscles need to be repaired. So some protein right after is important. Carbs are based on your weight, 1 to 1.5 grams, like I said earlier. Rehydrate yourself. Make sure that you rehydrate before you go out and start drinking, because guess what? If you start popping the champagne, then your body's going to dehydrate even more quickly. And it's going to be harder to restore your glycogen if you're dehydrated. So have a recovery meal or snack and repeat it again. What should you eat the day after the marathon? Well, you're hoping I'd say whatever you want. You just ran 26 miles, but no, I won't say that. You can have some foods that you crave, but not at the expense of some nutrient-rich foods, because your body really needs to repair and regenerate. You've used up all of these antioxidants and vitamins and minerals, so we really need nutrient-rich foods. Steak, sweet potatoes, broccoli is a great meal, berries and chocolate for dessert, or chicken stir-fry with loads of vegetable, or a yogurt parfait with lots of healthy fruits in them. You'll be hungry, so your body really needs to restore its reserves. We need protein, carbs, and fruits and vegetables. You need to rehydrate. Allison will talk about that in just a second. You need to sleep, and I'm sure most people don't have a problem with that, but sleep is restorative. It's when a lot of the repair processes go on. And don't get upset if you gain some weight right after the marathon, because your body really needs to replenish what you've used. And your body will store water along with that, which is fine. And that's it. So thank you.